Ah, my dear. You played the fool so well. They forgot you were holding the blueprint to their destruction. They saw you nod, smile, sit quietly at the edge of the chaos, and they assumed silence meant stupidity. They mistook patience for weakness. They thought your stillness was a symptom of cluelessness, like a deer caught in headlights, when in truth you were the headlights, and they were already paralyzed in your glare. Every time they whispered behind your back, you were writing mental footnotes. Every backhanded compliment was another log in your bonfire. They giggled in corners, swapping lies with grins carved from arrogance, thinking they were building empires on your confusion. But all they built was a theater, and you let them, because the final act was yours to write. See fools rush in with daggers, but masterminds wait with scalpels. You let them believe you were slow, unaware, a step behind. But in reality, you were 10 steps ahead, choosing not to move, watching their patterns, mapping every betrayal like a predator, memorizing prey behavior. You let them paint you as clueless, because people reveal more when they think you're not watching. And oh, how they danced. They performed like jesters, bragging, boasting, spinning webs made of ego and assumption. They thought they had you surrounded, but you were never in the circle. They just couldn't see the sniper on the hill. They underestimated your quiet. That was their first mistake. Quiet people aren't clueless. They're architects. While they screamed and fought to be seen, you were building bombs in the shadows. While they raced to control the narrative, you were gathering evidence, timelines, patterns, waiting for the moment they'd beg for the silence they used to mock. You didn't react, you recorded. You didn't argue, you absorbed. Because the loudest room never notices the one sharpening the knife in the corner. And by the time they did, it was already embedded deep in the illusion they built. They never realized the danger of someone who lets the world think they're lost. Because when you're underestimated, you're free. Free to learn, free to plot, free to blend in. They handed you their truths wrapped in lies, thinking you'd never unwrap them. But you did, piece by piece. You dissected every word, every smirk, every contradiction. And when the time came, you didn't explode. You simply unzipped the bag and poured the truth like acid across the floor. No theatrics, just cold, brutal revelation. Because power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers and leaves behind echoes that haunt. You weren't clueless. You were mercilessly calculating. You saw every game, every setup, every manipulation. They mistook your silence for surrender. But silence isn't surrender. Sometimes it's the sound of someone loading ammunition. You waited until they were too arrogant to backpedal, too loud to deny, too exposed to hide. Then you dropped it, all of it, one truth after another, like shattering glass across their scripted reality. You didn't argue, you dismantled, you didn't scream, you revealed. And the silence that followed, that was the sound of masks crumbling. The ones who once scoffed at you now scramble for explanations. Suddenly, you're not so clueless. Suddenly, you're terrifying, because nothing is more terrifying than the person you wrote off, holding all your secrets in one hand and your fake persona in the other. They thought they could feed you lies, and you'd stay hungry. But you cooked a truth so potent, it made them choke on their own narratives. Their eyes said it all. That glint of panic, that flicker of, how the hell did they know? You knew because you weren't blind. You were biding your time, chewing on their lies, waiting for the moment to spit the bones in their faces. They called you naive while you were documenting timestamps. They laughed at your confusion, not knowing it was a mask made of mirrors, reflecting their deception back at them. They leaned in, thinking they were whispering into a void, but you were a vault, storing everything for the reckoning. And when the vault opened, it wasn't a scream. It was a funeral march. You didn't come to argue or defend. You came to show cold, ruthless, undeniable truth. Not opinions, not accusations, just the facts laid out like corpses under white lights. They weren't ready. They never were. Because people who manipulate others never prepare for the day their puppet turns out to be the puppeteer. They never expect the dumb one to have receipts. They never imagine the silent one memorized the blueprint of their betrayal. You gave them rope, and they spun it into gold chains of ego. Then you turned it into a noose of accountability. They were so busy laughing, they didn't notice the trapdoor beneath their feet. You didn't push them. You just pulled the lever they installed themselves. That's the thing about lies. They don't age well, but you let them rot, ferment, become volatile. Then you lit the match, and when you dropped the truth, it didn't shout. It detonated. No warnings, no dramatic build-up, just boom. Everything they tried to hide surfaced. Everything they mocked you for became their indictment. Their gossip, now evidence, their jokes, now confessions. And your cluelessness? A ghost they'll never stop fearing. Because now they know you saw it all, and you said nothing. You endured every smirk, every side-eye, every casual cruelty. And you smiled, not because you were clueless, but because you were patient. And now, your patience has them in ruins. You didn't just speak the truth, you weaponized it. You turned it into a blade and carved away their masks. And now they stand exposed, raw, vulnerable, humiliated, not by your wrath, but by your precision. They tried to play you like a pawn, but pawns don't gather data. Queens do, kings do, and you were both silent, still, strategic, and now every time they hear your name, it rattles something primal. Not fear, not guilt, something worse. Awareness. Awareness that they were seen, tracked, outplayed. But this is just the beginning. Because when you drop a truth that big, the real game starts after the silence. See, they thought being exposed was the worst part. But no, the worst part is what comes next. The unraveling, the paranoia, the whispers, the desperation to control the narrative again, only to realize the narrative doesn't belong to them anymore. You rewrote it with ink so dark, it stains everything they touch now. Their lies echo back at them, their circle shrinking, their influence rotting, and you're still silent, still watching, still holding truths they don't even know are loaded, because what you dropped was only chapter 1. And as the dust settles and their world limps forward, shaky, cracked, unstable, you're already moving to the next phase. Not for revenge, not for applause, but because there's more to unveil, more rot to expose, and more masks to rip off. The dominoes have only started to fall, and they don't know yet, but they're about to watch everything they built collapse in real time. And as the dust from your truth bomb slowly settles, they're still gasping not from the blow, but from the realization that the person they dismissed, overlooked, and mocked just cracked open their facade like a crowbar to porcelain. You didn't just speak, you detonated. You redefined the battlefield in one move, and now every glance, every hallway conversation, every room you walk into feels like a trap to them, because suddenly, you're the variable they can't control. You flipped their world, rewrote the script, and now they're fumbling in the dark for the spotlight that used to be theirs. But the lights are gone. And in this new version of the story, you are the storm, and they are just wet paper, desperate not to dissolve. See, when someone like you, misjudged, mislabeled, underestimated, finally steps out of the fog and speaks, with clarity so sharp it cuts marrow, it doesn't just sting, it restructures. Now they sit in silence, trying to calculate how long you've known, how much you've seen. They replay conversations in their heads like broken records, wondering which lie was their undoing. But it's too late. You're not just holding the truth. You are the truth, personified, walking proof that a silent observer is more dangerous than 1,000 loud pretenders. You played the background until the entire picture couldn't exist without you. And now that you've moved forward, their reality is crumbling behind you. They can't even look at you the same way anymore. You were the harmless one. Remember? The naive one. The one they could manipulate, push, overwrite. And now? Now you're radioactive. Everything you say burns through their carefully crafted illusions. Your presence alone rewinds their lies in their minds like a film strip melting in a projector. Because when someone reveals they were never fooled, it forces every liar in the room to question their grip. You became the mirror they've been avoiding, the reflection they feared, and now they can't look away. Because in your silence, they see their undoing. And here's the bitter twist of poetic justice. They can't even retaliate, because you didn't lie. You didn't manipulate. You didn't twist or dramatize. You just revealed. And nothing terrifies a fraud more than being exposed without theatrics. Your truth didn't scream. It echoed. And now it's bouncing off every wall they once stood tall against, reminding them that the throne they built wasn't solid. It was scaffolding built on arrogance and assumptions. Now it shakes with every step they take. Now the people they once influenced begin to question. If they lied about that, what else are they hiding? The seed has been planted, and you water it with every calm, unshaken breath you take. But this phase, this is where the fun begins, because once the truth is out, they scramble to discredit it. Damage control mode. Their pride will never let them accept defeat openly. So they twist, they distort, they whisper that you are emotional, delusional, confused. But none of it sticks, because you didn't just drop statements, you dropped evidence, timelines, consistency, logic, things that don't bend to petty denial. They try to talk over you, but you've already outgrown the room. They try to rewrite the story, but you own the pen now. And while they flail to save face, the walls around them start remembering the truth too. See, the truth is a strange thing. It doesn't need a stage, it just needs time. And now, even those who stayed silent during your fall are leaning closer, watching, not out of loyalty, but fear. Because if you could do this to them, who's next? What else have you seen? Whose mask will you pull next? You've become a phantom in their minds, a ghost that doesn't haunt with fear, but with memory. The memory of underestimating the wrong person, of thinking intelligence wore loud clothes and made big speeches, of forgetting that the sharpest scalpel isn't waved around. It's hidden in silence until it slices, and now they spiral. Not because they lost, but because they realized they never stood a chance. You let them think they were ahead. You gave them space to perform. You watched them tighten the noose with every lie. And just when they thought they were being clever, you revealed the floor was never theirs. You were never the one in danger. They were, from the very beginning, because you saw it all. You knew, and they hate you for that. Not for the exposure, but for the power of endurance. Because it takes power to endure betrayal with a smile. To collect wounds like trophies and still walk tall. To wait until truth is the loudest voice in the room, and yours. Now they try to reorganize their tribe, gather their remaining allies, patch the holes in their egos. But it's not working, because deep down, even their closest ones are beginning to doubt. What if they're not who I thought they were? That's the curse of exposure. It doesn't just destroy reputations, it corrodes alliances. One drop of truth can contaminate an entire ecosystem of lies. And now you've shattered the glass. The cracks are spreading, and the ones still clinging to them, they're just choosing to drown a little slower. But you're not done. Oh no. That first truth you dropped, that was the match. But now you light the fuse, not out of vengeance, but to reset the balance, to restore what their manipulation poisoned. You're not on a warpath, you're on a cleansing. And the terrifying part for them is you're calm, you're focused, you're deliberate, not seeking chaos, but bringing order through exposure, not screaming into the void, but building structures from their ruins. You didn't just survive their games, you mastered them, and now you write the rules. There's a shift in every room now. People sit up straighter when you speak. They listen longer. The air changes when your name comes up. Some admire you, some envy you, and the ones who wronged you, they dread you. Because you didn't throw stones, you moved tectonic plates. They see the ripple effects, they hear the whispers, and they know. If you decided to end their empire with a whisper, what else could you destroy if you raised your voice? But here's the final twist, the one that truly haunts them. You're not looking back. You're not stuck in revenge. You dropped the truth, left the crater, and now you walk forward, unstoppable. That's the real punishment, that they don't matter anymore. That after all their schemes, their petty victories, their smug performances, you're moving ahead without them. No rage, no vendetta, just progress. And that devastates them. Because it means they didn't break you, they just woke you up. And now you're untouchable. You've tasted what it means to speak truth without apology. You've seen what it does to those who live behind masks, and you'll never unsee it. You've crossed that line, and on the other side is clarity, fireproof confidence, and a sharpened instinct. You don't seek approval anymore. You don't beg to be understood, because truth doesn't need permission to exist. And you're the embodiment of that. So as their echo chamber collapses around them, and the same walls they built to box you in now close in on them, you just keep walking. Not above them, not beneath them, beyond them, because that's where you live now. In the space beyond pretenders, beyond shallow games, beyond facades, you no longer seek to prove anything, you just are. And they'll feel that absence like a wound that never heals. But this isn't the end. Oh no, this was just phase 2. Now comes the revelation that not only were you never clueless, you were always in command. And now, here you are, past the wreckage, past the whispers, past the lies turned dust beneath your feet. They thought your truth was the climax, but it was only the ignition. They thought the shockwave would fade, but it became doctrine. The truth didn't just wake them up, it redefined you in their minds forever. Now every breath you take is a reminder that their game is obsolete. You didn't just burn bridges. You built highways across the ashes, and they can't even find the map anymore. Because you stopped playing by their rules. You rewrote gravity. This is the part they never saw coming. The aftermath. The long stretch where they hoped you'd fade back into silence, retreat into shame, crawl back into that role they crafted for you. But instead, you thrived. You evolved. You walked away clean, not just unscathed, but upgraded. Like the fire they lit under you only forged sharper steel. And they're still standing at ground zero, looking at each other, trying to decode how the story flipped, how the punchline became a prophecy, how the quiet one became the epicenter. And no one's laughing now. Now they study you, they analyze, they mimic, but they'll never replicate. Because what you did came from pain, real pain, the kind you can't fake, the kind that builds fortresses around your soul and turns wounds into weapons. You didn't become powerful by chance. You were sculpted by pressure, betrayal, and silence. While they performed, you transformed. And now that the mask is off, you don't just see through them. You see beyond them. And they can feel it. Like a cold draft in a locked room, like a shadow that doesn't belong to anyone. See, power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just is. And yours terrifies them because it doesn't beg for acknowledgement. It doesn't posture or gloat. It walks in, commands the air, and exposes everything artificial. That's the thing they never understood. Truth doesn't compete. It eradicates. It doesn't ask for stage time. It rips the stage out from under false narratives and leaves the audience staring at rubble. And in your silence, in your aftermath, they're still crumbling. Not from what you did, but from the realization that you could have done more. That if this was you holding back, then they've never truly known fear. They'll spend the rest of their lives adjusting their masks, second-guessing every interaction, watching their backs for a ghost that no longer cares to haunt them because you've moved on. And that's the final blow they can't recover from. Not vengeance, not retaliation, indifference. Because nothing kills a narcissist more than being irrelevant to the one they tried to control. You took their power, not by attacking it, but by making it useless. Their tricks don't work on you anymore. Their gaslight is a flicker in your storm, and they know it. Every attempt to provoke you falls flat. Every scheme collapses before it begins, because your silence now has weight. It doesn't beg, it judges. People whisper your name now, not out of fear, but out of curiosity, respect, even reverence. Not because you screamed, but because when the time came, you knew exactly where to strike. You didn't throw a tantrum. You executed a masterpiece. You didn't create chaos. You revealed it. And the ones who once cheered for your downfall, they're either silent or pretending they were always on your side. That's what truth does. It bends reality. And your version has become gospel. Not because you said it louder, but because you said it once, and it never needed repeating. But here's what makes your evolution unstoppable. You learned to let go. Not out of mercy, not out of weakness, but because you finally realized they're not worth carrying. You don't want revenge. You want elevation, and they're still chained to the pit they dug for you, wondering why their tricks don't pull you down anymore. It's simple. You're not in the same realm now. You're not fueled by spite. You're fueled by clarity. The kind of clarity that turns people into monuments. The kind that transforms pain into legacy. The kind that walks into a room and says, "I don't need to prove anything. My presence is the evidence." And yet, here's the irony. They'll still keep watching, obsessively. Like addicts missing the high of control, they'll stalk your success in silence, dissect your words, envy your composure, because deep down, they need you to fall. They need it to feel whole again. But you've disconnected from that cycle. You've unplugged the emotional strings they once tugged with ease. You became the final chapter they can't rewrite, the one where they don't just lose. You don't even mention them anymore. But don't get it twisted. This isn't about forgetting. You remember everything. You just don't let it own you anymore. You carry it like armor, not chains. You wield it like fire, not baggage. You are not healed by pretending it didn't happen. You are powerful because you embraced it. You studied it. You absorbed every lesson, every scar, every lie, and used it as blueprint for your ascension. That's why they fear you, because you're not coming from rage. You're coming from wisdom, and wisdom dismantles kingdoms built on delusion. Now you build, you create, you lead, not from a place of ego, but from liberation. The truth you dropped wasn't just a weapon, it was a cleansing. And now you walk in rooms where they once mocked you, and the air holds your echo. They try to shrink when you appear, but it's too late. You grew. They can't dismiss you anymore. They can't predict you anymore. And most painful of all, they can't reach you anymore. Because you outgrew their limitations. You outgrew their relevance. And it's not just about you now. Your truth inspired others, silently, quietly. People who watched you rise without theatrics, who saw the strength in your composure, the fire in your silence. You became a symbol, not of revenge, but of rebirth. You didn't scream at the system. You proved it could be bypassed. And the ones still stuck in the game, they whisper about you with awe. How did they do it? Simple. You stopped needing their validation. You've become something else entirely now. Something unshakable. And the beauty of it? You don't need to convince anyone. Your existence is enough. Your growth is the retaliation. Your presence is the proof. You don't need to swing anymore. You just walk, and walls collapse on their own. And still, they sit in their echo chambers, telling themselves it was luck, that you just got lucky, that the truth you dropped was a fluke, that your rise was a coincidence, because admitting the real reason would burn too deep, admitting that they misjudged you, that you were never clueless, that they weaponized false confidence while you built silent strength. That's a truth they'll choke on forever. You didn't just win. You changed the game. You didn't just expose them. You exposed the system that enabled them, and now you leave them behind, not broken by your hands, but ruined by your clarity, not because you fought dirtier, but because you rose cleaner. The world knows now. You were never lost. You were loading, and now you're the force they never prepared for. The lie they told about you became the truth that buried them.